Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers, wherever you are around the world and around the country. Arc date 2015-1-29. Alright, I'm going to read How to Get Out of Babylon, my book, section 4. Starts with a passage titled, Drive Now or Walk Later. And so I believe that is going to happen. I never really said that before, but I believe that is going to happen. So that began a 3-day marathon. I wouldn't say I intended to do it, but just a marathon of thoughts and a structuring of a plan or idea flowed through my head, a massive plan to see that be able to happen, come to pass. What I saw was, at the tail end of 3 years, more like 23 years, anyway, these were people on foot, not people selling their homes in the city because they had foresight enough, sense enough, guts enough, desire enough, and determination enough to sell their home in the city while it was worth anything at all, and use that money for the building of the kingdom of God. This was a couple that didn't have the drive, the money, or whatever it took to relocate sooner. Instead of having all their life's accumulated wealth and pulling a loaded trailer, they are on foot, with the clothes on their back, small children in hand. But for whatever reason, this is going to happen. There will be refugees. They may be true believers, and so nonetheless, they are refugees for whatever reason, in my Father's house. To see them have a home, however, is possible. It is possible. It's possible that 3 million people could come out of Babylon, the system, and the cities in the next few years. We can see it happen, we can make it happen, and be part of it happening. It's an awesome idea, and I believe that we are speaking this into existence. We're speaking that dream into existence, and this concept, this plan into existence. Put it out on the internet, email it to everyone, and develop websites for it, and link up with other websites that are community-oriented. Get the idea out there. Plant it, spread it, broadcast it. Tithing, land caring for widows and orphans. This is the core of the idea. Let's say you live in what would be the safe area, mostly southwestern Missouri, southeast Kansas, northeast Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, or some other area of the country, and you owned 200 acres. What would be wrong with tithing 10% of that land to the Lord for the building of homes for the poor, for refugees, for widows and orphans? We are commanded to take care of those people. It's in the law, both in the Old Testament as well as the New. 10 acres is enough as a rule of thumb for a family to subsist on. My rule of thumb. They can graze a milk cow and raise a garden and have wood to cut for a fire and to build a home with. 2 families could subsist on the 200 acres that is owned by the landowner without really encroaching upon the landowner. In fact, if you looked at them as poor but good people, and they didn't make it out in time, and they didn't sell their house like you did 20 years ago and established yourself on the land and bought 200 acres. Well, let's say that you build homes and they're there, and 2 families show up and need homes and they're willing to work. You now have 2 families of quote-unquote employees. In biblical terms, they are servants or slaves. That's Old Testament. This is a part of the plan. People that already own land tithe 10% and set it aside. Now you are going to build those homes at your own expense. Now, are you going to build those homes at your own expense? No, you don't need to. I hope to see increased numbers of construction companies building these homes. For the setting aside of that land, which in most parts of Missouri in these areas, 10 acres would be worth about $10,000. They would still own it and be caretakers of it. They're going to obey the law by taking care of the poor, the widows, and the needy. You may have a widow that has a business, a very good business. Maybe for the exchange of that land, we build a house or a garage or an office building near your main house. Let's say $10,000 for the house. Build it for $8,000 in trade for the 10 acres. That would be set aside basically for the Lord. Then build a house on that property for a family to come in and live there. Employees, servants. When that is done and that property is set aside for the Lord and that family comes in who is poor or needy, refugee or widow or an orphan under the care of a ward or someone, you now have more employees. You've added a significant margin to the survivability factor of your small community, your family community on your 200 acres. So that's the gist of the plan. That can expand to a farmer who has 1,000 acres, and if he would be willing to set aside some of that acreage, 10%, there could be a small community there around him. They could help him farm the place. It's an idea that can happen. Claiming land by building altars. Another thing that Israel always did was to build altars when claiming land. To walk the land everywhere on which you tread with the sole of your foot, I shall give unto you. When Joshua crossed the Jordan, they had one man from each tribe pick up 12 stones from the middle of the river, and they built an altar. Joshua built an altar. So one way to claim land is to build altars. Well, my family, thinking that we still wanted to rent a certain house and a certain property, built an altar there. The very next time I spoke with the landowner to tell her at that point in time that we were not interested in the house any longer, even though it's a beautiful house. It's a mansion and probably worth $500,000. It's on 160 acres. It was $350 per month rent with a huge steel barn, a pond, a fenced pasture for cattle, a huge garden area, pecan trees, apple trees, and all that. It was phenomenal for $350 per month. And I called her to tell her that nope, we didn't want to rent the property because we realized that we have to live in a home that when we're done building, it won't cost anything. It will be paid for. It's paid for, and it won't cost us anything, hardly anything to heat or cool, which this big house would. I told her we wanted to build an earth-sheltered house. I said that all I needed was land to build it on. She said, well, I have 160 acres. You can build a house on my land. She'd have to check with her husband and her son. So here's a beautiful example. We built an altar and prayed and claimed the land, and the very next time I talked to that landowner, that land was offered to me for the building of a home. And I explained my idea, the plan to her, the Eagle's Wings plan. I felt it was a confirmation of two of the ideas, of building altars and of building and owning a home which is paid for free and clear, with no interest or loan payments to a bank. Hanging together or hanging separately. The core idea of what we're dealing with here is a program to build homes, and it's going to take a lot. It may very well demand working together with people that you might not be on the same page with in all areas. You may be on the same page in a lot of ways, which we are, and yet doctrinally there may be some differences here and there. It's going to take a lot of cooperation in a lot of areas, and that's what we need to get into here. Where to gather. In regard to this, what kind of area are we looking at? What area of the country? What area of the state should be considered? I'd say that we're looking at an area where land is not real expensive. You're not near large population centers, which drive the price of land up to anywhere from $2,000 an acre and up. In Denver, actually up in Fort Collins, a friend of ours said that to buy just a lot for a module or mobile home is $70,000 to $80,000. That's mind-boggling. It is insane. For $70,000 to $80,000 out here in Missouri, at $1,000 an acre, you can get 70 to 80 acres and build your own home. Have a garden, goats, chickens, ducks, geese, llamas, whatever else you want to raise. You can actually buy a farm for $40,000 and move in, or $50,000 and move right in. For $80,000, I saw a 40-acre farm with. I'm not supposed to be commenting. 150,000. Twice I've seen farms here, 150,000, at least $150,000 worth of buildings and improvements on them. Go for $50,000. So what area of the country? An area perhaps where there's good wood for building and firewood. We need an area where the soil is good. It must be an area of the country where wind patterns are not going to dump a lot of radioactive material on you. A place where there are no building codes would be advisable to reduce the cost of home building. I think that is critical. If we're going to build earth-sheltered homes, we can't be. If we're going to build earth-sheltered homes, we're going to build a lot of homes inexpensively. It's going to have to be in an area of the country where you're not fighting building inspectors and that driving the cost of the construction up. And then you have to contract with a particular type of contractor, a state licensed contractor, etc. We've got to be in an area where we can go out and build a home and live in it and not have anybody on our backs or looking over our shoulders or photographing our structure and taxing us for it. That is a critical area there. There needs to be water, surface water, well water, and ponds. Wildlife would be nice. I said not necessary, but it's part of the equation. Gardens and wildlife, greenhouses, row crops. All right, that was it. That was section 4. This is Jerry Diamond. If you're listening to this, you are the remnant. Goodbye.